Welcome to the only daily podcast focusing on compliance news of the day. Each morning, start your day with a cup of coffee and Tom Fox, the voice of compliance, to hear about 4 of the top compliance, corruption, or leadership stories you will need to start your day. The Daily Compliance News is a production of the Compliance Podcast Network.
December 31, 2019, the End of the Teens edition. First up, from the New York Times, an article entitled "The Pendulum Has Swung Back as the Latin American Corruption Fight Has Stalled." There were obviously some big wins in anti-corruption enforcement or corruption prosecutions in Latin America over the past few years. PDVSA, Jabalito, Odebrecht, Braskem, JBF are all well known in the anti-corruption compliance community. But now efforts to adopt anti-corruption reforms have sputtered amongst political pressure. And as discredited figures in business and politics mount comebacks, they are after those who led the crusade against graft. Many are now in exile, and it's going to be probably disheartening to see that the pendulum has now swung back, and those who were convicted of corruption will now be like Judge Kavanaugh and go after those who went after them. So Brazil's black backsliding on corruption may be the most dramatic and consequential, given how much prosecutors accomplished, bringing charges against 476 people and recovering over $900 million in assets. But given the presidency of Brazil, it's probably no big surprise. Another big surprise, rather, comes from the Wall Street Journal reporting that Carlos Ghosn has jumped bail in Japan and has fled for Lebanon. The former boss of Nissan and Renault has left Japan and traveled to his homeland, obviously trying to fight any extradition for his trial. He had been living in a house in Tokyo and was required to stay in the country pending his trial. It's not clear how he was able to leave. Nevertheless, he arrived in Lebanon via Turkey, and Lebanon's criminal code prohibits extradition of its citizens. So you don't flee a country and go to a non-extradition treaty country unless you have something to hide and be afraid of. And Mr. Ghosn appears to have both. Next up, the Securities and Exchange Commission, as is its wont, announcing major changes literally at 5 o'clock on the day before a news cycle ends, has announced proposed changes to auditor independence rules, which relax regulation of audit firms in cases involving affiliates of their clients in preparations for initial public offerings. The proposed rule, which has been released for comment over the next 60 days, represents a further potential loosening of regulations after the June approval of auditors' rules governing funding and auditors' financial ties to the same lender. This shows the continued move by Jay Clayton to gut shareholder rights and information provided to shareholders through a series of change. And finally, first there was diversity, then there was inclusion. Now HR wants everyone to feel like they belong. The Washington Post reports that belonging is the new hot corporate buzzword. It's popping up everywhere. Diversity, inclusion, and belonging. I guess now, if you get the knock on the door from HR, it's not the dreaded "come with me." HR wants to visit with you, but perhaps HR wants you to belong more closely to our organization. So it's going to be interesting to see how long this movement lasts. So today is the last day of 2019 and of the second decade of the 21st century. I want to wish you a happy and, most importantly, safe New Year's Eve, and I look forward to visiting with you in 2020. Thanks so much for listening to the Daily Compliance News.